Hello and welcome to The Menu, Monocle Radio's food and drink programme. I'm your host, Chiara Rimella. Coming up, we get into the festive spirit with an episode all about drinking and dining at Christmas. First up, Team Menu brings you our selection of must-have holiday treats from around Europe.
But we kind of always have it's very English, but we always have our turkey dinner after the King's speech at about 4:00, and then we generally just pick on chocolates and treats throughout the day.
Also on the programme, George Ruskin sinks his teeth into Lübeck marzipan. Plus, we visit an iconic London market ahead of its annual festive jamboree. All that here on The Menu on Monocle Radio. Every family has its own traditions when it comes to Christmas, but there are certain treats that bring a whole nation together. Across Europe, this is a time when sweets, cheeses, cured meats and tipples are enjoyed in a ritual that repeats year after year. After all, decorations and presents may matter to some, but food is what really gets people excited to celebrate this season. With this in mind, this show's producer Monica Lillis and I set out on a mission to scout out some of the best products that belong on a festive table. Earlier, we sat down in the studio to taste test them for ourselves. Monica, it's so nice to actually have you in the studio on this side of the glass.
You know what? It's lovely to be here. And it's really weird. I was just saying before we started recording, we've never actually done this together.
You and I actually have eaten quite a fair bit together and about.
Yes.
So we know each other's taste. But I do have to say that I'm not entirely sure about what your personal Christmas traditions are. What's your favourite kind of treat when it comes to Christmas season, and what's your family tradition?
Well, my dad always does the cooking, which maybe in gender norm terms is kind of the opposite to usual. But we kind of always have I guess it's very English, but we always have our turkey dinner after the King's speech at about 4:00, and then we generally just pick on kind of chocolates and treats throughout the day. Drinking starts quite early, as it usually does in Britain. But yeah, how about you? What about in Italia?
Well, my dad also cooks, interestingly enough, and he makes ravioli every year to my grandma's recipe. Very complicated, laborious. They're made from 3 different kinds of meat, and they take like days to make because he has to make the 3 roasts, and then you have to make the pasta, and then you have to create each single parcel. And it's nice because I've started making those with him. So he makes them to grandma's recipe, and I've started making them with him. So hopefully that will carry it on, even though I'm nowhere near as good a cook as he or grandma was. Yeah. And then, of course, panettone, pandoro, every single family in Italy will have a favourite on either side of the debate. But today we do actually have some treats from Italy in store.
We do.
Not the usual panettone staple. We've tried to veer a little bit from...
Well, we did panettone, pandoro last year, so we can't repeat ourselves, can we?
No, never. And also, you'd be surprised, there's more Christmas treats out there in the world than perhaps the normal aisles of the supermarket might suggest. And we've decided to go on to a bit of a kind of European grand tour to discover some of those traditions.
We really have had a good time shopping for all of this.
We went a bit overboard, but with Christmas, that's not really a thing. So shall we begin with Spain?
Yes, let's talk about Spain. So on researching Spanish Christmas traditions, the main thing that came up, which will be at the centre of the table, is this Iberico ham, which is obviously popular here. But we've gone for this particular brand. Chiara, do you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the brand actually, I've got to say, it's so funny. We bought it in this like tiniest little parcel that looked almost like a card holder of jamón ibérico, which is really, really cute. The brand's called Juan Pedro Domecq, and it's really historic. It's been running since 1730. They used to make wine as well, and then they started raising Iberico pigs. And as people who have had Iberico ham before, they all know that it's a very specific breed of pig, and they feed only on acorns, which is what gives it this amazing kind of buttery sort of flavour.
And you can really smell it here in the studio. It's got quite a strong smell. It's got a beautiful sheen, which is obviously this real fatty sort of sheen. So I really can't wait to try it.
Yeah, so as you try it, I will tell you something about the reason why it's so important in Christmas traditions in Spain. I mean, not only because people do eat charcuterie around this time, and it's kind of a fairly luxurious item that you might want to gift at Christmas, but also I read that given that it is a pork product, it has been used historically to figure out whether families were actually Christian or not. If they were eating pork products, obviously that meant they were not Muslim, and therefore,
Well, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, in the Iberian Peninsula?
Exactly. So let's try it, even though Christmas has not necessarily retained quite as much of a religious connotation as it used to.
Maybe not for us.
I can certainly sink my teeth into this. Do you want to give it a try?
I'll tell you what, I've never tasted anything like it. Obviously it's got that Iberico cured meat flavour that you kind of get in the supermarkets, but it's so intense and almost nutty. Do you think?
Absolutely. That's the acorns that the pigs
eat
and that transfer into the flavour of the meat. But it's really soft and supple and juicy. It really almost doesn't feel like a cured meat. It almost feels like a
pastry. It's like so sweet at the same time as it's being savoury. It's delicious.
Are you a big fan of the charcuterie board come Christmas?
Oh my goodness, yes, you can't go wrong. And I think it's definitely one of the better things that we've adopted here in Britain from the continent, for sure. Shall we move on?
Yeah, I would say let's head to Germany, even though it's a kind of a slight detour via the Tibetan plateau. Because we have quite possibly the most luxurious item on the table today. My family isn't necessarily very fancy come Christmas, but lots of people like to splash out. And, in France, they always eat oysters at Christmas. And people do like to kind of go for the really higher end of the market. So we've got a little tin of caviar with us today.
We have got a little tin of caviar. And what I didn't mention actually before when we were talking about traditions, in my family, we always eat. I don't know where it's come from. I think it's kind of like the splashing out and the decadence of it. But we always have, for our starter, we'll have blinis, we'll sit by the fire, we'll drink a glass of champagne, and we'll have salmon and caviar. So that's kind of where this choice came for me. So this is N25, as Chiara says. It's a German-based brand, but they actually get their eggs and their sturgeon from China, and it's sent from China over to Germany where, it's kind of sorted out into higher luxury eggs and lower luxury eggs. So they have two brands. So they have N25, which is kind of their premium brand, and they have Umai, which is their less premium brand, but obviously still delicious and I guess more accessible for those who want a salty treat on Christmas Day or whenever. And actually, it's probably quite a good price, really, around £100 a tin for this more premium stuff. So it's probably a bit better than some of the other options on the market. So I'm really excited to try it because it shouldn't be. So I spoke to an expert earlier this year, and it shouldn't be too salty. It should kind of have, I guess, similar to the Iberico ham, it should have this kind of like nutty, smooth flavour. So would you like a bit on the back of your hand, Chiara?
Yes, please.
What do you reckon?
It's quite subtle.
It's very subtle. I think this one is more meant to be enjoyed on its own, or maybe even has a really slight salty tanginess. Maybe is meant to be cut through a dessert even.
A dessert?
Yeah. So actually it really goes really well. So I went to a dinner and where they were serving caviar on basically a cake, and it cuts through that sweetness really, really well because it's got that lovely salty, buttery sort of flavour. And it's excellent.
Maybe we should stay in Germany, but for an altogether different type of product. A great classic of Christmas.
God,
you're the one with the
watering.
German pronunciation, so please.
So the Lebkuchen, and sorry to all the Germans that listen to us. So this is Wickelmeister Singer Allerlei, the soft gingerbread. So it's this really delicious, a very traditional, as Chiara said, German Christmas treat.
So this isn't just a bit of a traditional Christmas treat. This company, Wickeln, is Nuremberg oldest gingerbread manufacturer.
Wow.
Over 400 years old.
400 years, wow.
Yeah, incredible. And, Nuremberg is, I think, the home of gingerbread in Germany. Obviously, you can have delicious Lebkuchen pretty much everywhere, but Nuremberg, where it's at, and it's got sort of like a denomination of origin. And let's see if the recipe has stood the test of time. We've chosen a soft gingerbread, which I personally quite like.
I love a soft gingerbread, yeah.
This one's coated in chocolate, which is quite decadent. And some of the purists might prefer theirs just covered in a little bit of icing or even just nothing at all. But I think this is quite festive. It comes in little shapes as well.
I know, it's very cute. And this kind of reminds me, I spent some time in Germany during my university years. So it really brings me back. And it's just that smell of, well, ginger and the cinnamon and the allspice, and it really, it feels kind of like a bite of home, doesn't it?
So, did you know that Nuremberg gingerbread can only be called that if it's baked within the city limits? And Nuremberg, the reason why gingerbread is so special to this city is because it used to be, I suppose, the centre of the spice trade in Europe. And, you know, yes, you need honey and you need delicious kind of flour and things in it, but you can really, really feel the warming kind of spices in this.
It would definitely warm you up on a cold winter's day.
I reckon that it's time to head to my homeland because we've talked about it, and why not? I decided to pick out for you a panforte.
Yeah, I've never actually heard of this. So tell me what it actually is, because I obviously, you know, as we spoke about earlier, heard of the panettone and the pandoro, but what is a panforte?
So panforte comes from Tuscany, from Siena specifically. And the name itself just means strong bread. And I suppose it is strong because it's much denser and it's chocker full of nuts and bits and candied fruit. And as you can see, it's like a thin disc, and it really is quite heavy. It's super dense. But it's very, very classic of Tuscany. Because as you know, like Italy is a country, but it also has so many different regional differences.
Yeah, absolutely.
So us in Turin would never really eat this. But in other regions, they would swear not to eat a slice of panettone and would go for their own versions. Panettone is actually originally from Milan. So Milan's where you'll get the best panettones in Italy.
I love panettone, so I feel like this is going to be a bit of a competition.
It's strange, this, because I don't think it really bears that much resemblance to it. Aside from, I suppose, the classic smells of Christmas. It's almost more like a nougat in texture.
Yeah, it's very dense and sticky, isn't it? And I'm a bit wary of the smell. It's not my cup of tea, but I can see why this would bring up all the feelings of Christmas deliciousness because of that real heavy candy, and it's really spicy, much like the gingerbread. Actually, it's really got that strong cinnamony, nutmeggy, all spicy kind of flavour within it.
I mean, it's a medieval recipe, it's a medieval tradition, and you can kind of tell, right? It does have that kind of preserved nuts and fruits for the winter months type of vibe to it.
I can see, you know, in the 1600s, if you needed some like a burst of energy. Yeah.
It's like an energy bar, but like medieval style.
The original energy bar.
It's also called pan pepato in Tuscany, which means pepper bread. So you can sort of, again, guess the kind of the spicy heritage of it. This example that we have here comes from a brand called Seggiano, which is, I guess, specialises in bringing Italian products into the UK market. And I think it's nice because they collaborate with like really small producers that perhaps wouldn't be able to kind of export their products to such a wide range of countries, and through a bit of a bigger setup they can.
And you totally know what it's like in London. We've got so many Italians here, so I imagine it's lovely to have a taste of home at Christmas.
Well, our whistle-stop tour of Europe continues.
Yeah, so this was actually my pick.
Obviously.
So here we have this lovely Irish cream liqueur from a brand called Five Farms from County Cork in Ireland, which is where my family hail. So I couldn't put it down once I picked it up. Obviously, it's made from this, what it says here, it's made from triple distilled Irish whiskey and obviously exclusively sourced in Cork. And it's basically, the idea is it's this made from this fresh dairy cream, which is from 5 family-owned farms, which is where it gets its name from farms, and they're all along the coastline of Cork, which has got this really, it's the southernmost county, so it's got this really mild climate, but with lots of rainfall, which makes the land super fertile and great for pastures, and obviously get this really rich, delicious cream from the cows.
So I didn't realise, I suppose, Bailey's is not as big a deal in like Italy, but here people love Baileys when it
Yes.
comes to Christmas. And this is sort of like the grown-up and actual proper version of that.
So for those who don't know, Baileys is basically the standard Irish cream liqueur that you'd get in Britain. And it's very sweet, very creamy, as you'd imagine, and quite strong. But this is really, yeah, like you say, it's the grown-up version, it's the refined version. And I think people probably drink this kind of all season round. I know for a fact that in the UK, especially, Irish cream liqueur is definitely a Christmas thing.
Well, I'll tell you why.
In my family it is too.
I'll tell you why it's particularly grown up, because I've read that Five Farms contains 10 times the amount of Irish whiskey than typical Irish creams. So I think we're about to...
Did we check the percentage before we bought this?
I think we're about to end on a high.
I really hope so.
Do you want to crack it open? It comes in this
really
really beautiful bottle that's supposed to kind of echo the look of a milk bottle that you would get delivered in front of your house.
And I will say before we try, I kind of bought this, or wanted to buy this, in a bit of an ode to my mum, because this is one of her favourite treats for Christmas. So cheers to my mother. Cheers to Christmas. How can you just can't argue with that. That's so delicious. It's so fresh.
It just tastes like toffee. But it's not as downright sweet as perhaps the other options on the market. It's really subtle, but it has this, caramelized aspect to it.
There's not much more to say. It's just delicious.
So cheers to that, Monica.
Cheers.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Few countries do Christmas better than Germany. From Christmas trees to gingerbread and festive stalls, it's no secret that Mitteleuropa knows how to celebrate the season. So, it's only right we should travel to the north of the country next, to the medieval city of Lübeck. Here, cobbled streets are lined with Christmas markets that speak of century-old traditions, and the air is sweet with the scent of roasted almonds. Lübeck's marzipan has been a staple of the festivities for generations, and the esteemed Café Niederegger has been perfecting this almond art form for hundreds of years. Here, Monocle's George Ruskin unwraps the story of Lübeck marzipan and the enduring charm of this delicacy.
To understand Lübeck's marzipan story, we have to start with the city itself. Lübeck, often called the Queen of the Hanseatic League, was one of Europe's most important trading hubs during the Middle Ages. The Hanseatic League was a powerful network of merchant cities spanning Northern Europe. Lübeck, with its prime location on the Baltic coast, became a crossroads of goods, ideas and cultures. The wealth flowing through the city funded its iconic architecture, like the towering Holsten Tor Gate, as well as the lavish Christmas markets that still line its streets every year. But what does this have to do with marzipan? Well, Lübeck's merchants didn't just trade wool, grain and fish, they also brought exotic ingredients from the Mediterranean: almonds, sugar and spices. These were the building blocks of marzipan, and they arrived in Lübeck at the same time as the artisans were setting up shop within the city walls. Lübeck wasn't the only European city making marzipan, but it quickly earned a reputation for doing it best. The reason for this lies in the quality of its ingredients and its craftsmanship, but there's one name that truly put Lübeck marzipan on the map: Johann Georg Niederegger. In 1806, Niederegger opened a small shop in Lübeck, aiming to perfect the art of marzipan. His recipe, with its high almond content and low sugar ratio, set a new standard. Niederegger's success wasn't just about the recipe, his cafe became a social hub. There's even a rumour that midway through lengthy political debates at the city's Rathaus, merchant officials would sneak off to Niederegger's cafe for coffee and Stollencake to escape the boredom of tariff negotiations, especially around Christmas, when people's minds are on their stomachs more than their finances. This central location, combined with Niederegger's unmatched skills, helped establish his brand as synonymous with marzipan excellence. To dive deeper into this story, I spoke with Katrin Giebel from Niederegger. Could you tell us a bit about the history of Niederegger and how it has become synonymous with marzipan and with Lübeck?
The company was founded over 200 years ago, so the exact date was in 1806 when Mr. Niederegger himself decided to start his own business. So this is when all the magic of marzipan started, we would say. So he bought a building in the city center of Lübeck where he opened his own cafe and a shop, and this was directly opposite to the town hall.
What makes Lübeck marzipan distinct from marzipan produced in other regions?
We would say it's about the quality. It's all about the quality in marzipan. And when you think about different qualities in marzipan, it's always defined by how many almonds you put into the marzipan and how much sugar. And so in Lübeck, all the confectioners agreed a long time ago that high quality marzipan consists of the highest amount of almonds that is possible. The way how we produce it is really comparable to what Mr. Niederegger did. So the almonds are carefully selected. When they arrive here in Lübeck, they have a brown skin around them, and they are then brewed by hot water. And then we take off the skin at the first step, which we still are using as a traditional way of roasting the marzipan. So this is kind of secret, we could say, that we have saved it to the history, that we still have the roasting process. It's quite small roasting, we call it cauldron. So it's made of copper, and we have 20 cauldrons running over an open flame. And this takes quite a long time before you get the marzipan and the right heat and the right aromas. But that's the only way to make sure that you have the special taste of the Niederegger marzipan.
Let's talk about Christmas, because marzipan and the holidays are inseparable in Lübeck. Niederegger's cafe transforms into a Christmas wonderland each December, filled with seasonal treats like cinnamon stars and marzipan Father Christmases. Why is marzipan such an integral part of Christmas traditions, especially in Lübeck and the surrounding areas?
The ingredients of marzipan were normally quite expensive, and this was the main reason why marzipan was more or less only given as a gift, as a present. So the tradition was handed over from generation to generation. So even me, I grew up and always got Niederegger marzipan as a Christmas gift.
Marzipan also stars in Lübeck's Christmas market, one of the city's most magical traditions. Imagine wooden stools draped in lights, the scent of roasted almonds and cinnamon in the air, and marzipan in all its forms, classic pralines, stollen, and even marzipan hot chocolate. Today, Lübeck marzipan is a global ambassador for the city's culinary heritage. Niederegger's products can be found worldwide, from Tokyo to New York. But as Katrin said,
when you are here in Lübeck and you'd like to get into Christmas mood, then you should visit our cafe. So it's still the same place where Mr. Niederegger founded the company. And this is really a Christmas world where you're getting into it. And by entering this house right at the beginning, you smell the marzipan and you can see a lot of decorations made of marzipan.
And for those new to Lübeck marzipan, Katrin has a recommendation.
The pure marzipan covered with dark chocolate is the most classical one you can find. And it's also the most loved one. And of course, for Christmas season, we also put it into the form or the shape of Santa Claus or like a Christmas star or whatever. Then we also have kind of special ingredients like cinnamon stars or gingerbread products just produced for Christmas season.
Lübeck marzipan is a sweet tradition with deep roots in Hanseatic history, artisanal craftsmanship, and Christmas joy. So whether you're making marzipan fruits for your Christmas cake, gifting a box of Niederegger to loved ones, or just savouring a piece with a mug of glühwein, take a moment to appreciate the centuries of trade and skills that have gone into a little piece of almondy magic.
George Ruskin with that report. This is the menu. Now it's time for the week's top food and drink headlines. Here is Monocle's Maisie Ringer.
The Regency Cafe, one of London's most esteemed greasy spoons, has been put up for sale. Since it opened in 1946, this Art Deco-style eatery has become a cultural touchstone, famed for its traditional cooked breakfasts and no-nonsense service. As prices rise in London and new upmarket cafes dominate the high streets, the Regency Cafe has maintained its unique character and affordable prices. Customers are concerned that the business's ownership will fall into the wrong hands. French company Gourmet is pioneering lab-grown foie gras made from duck egg cells in steel tanks, a product chefs say is indistinguishable from the real thing. This innovative approach, likened to fermentation, aims to replicate the taste and texture of traditional foie gras whilst avoiding the associated cruelty that comes with its rearing. The process is environmentally beneficial, producing less CO2 than farm animals whilst simultaneously addressing rising global meat demand. Gourmet's founder says the company is aiming to market the products next year. Christmas pudding is coming back to our festive tables after almost a decade of declining sales. Tesco, the UK's largest retailer, reported that sales of Christmas pudding were up 20% last week compared with the same period last year. The supermarket chain believes that demand for Christmas pudding is being revitalised by the booming demand for panettone, inspiring younger consumers to try other fruit-based puddings for the first time. The revival of the beloved pud comes as the price of the traditional Christmas dinner is set to rise again this year.
Thanks, Maisie. You're listening to The Menu. As we all know, Christmas is all about culinary traditions. In the UK, that means mince pies, turkey and, of course, Christmas pudding. But in London, one lesser-known tradition has been taking place every Christmas Eve morning for more than 100 years, an auction within the historic Smithfield meat market. And as the news broke last month that this historic market will close down its doors by 2028, it's important to cherish it while there's still time. This event is rooted in the city's trading history and will give a raucous Dickensian flavour to the start of your celebrations. And if you haven't decided what to cook for Christmas lunch yet, you might walk away with something unexpected. Angelica Jobson tells us more.
I'd never seen a leg of lamb airborne before. That is until my first visit to the Smithfield Christmas Eve meat auction. It sailed past me in a clear plastic bag, perilously open at one end, and landed in the expectant arms of a woman nearby. She was delighted. I'd also never witnessed joints of pork being passed backwards through a sea of upstretched arms, like crowd-surfing rock stars, but with trotters attached. In the other direction, 10 and 20-pound notes waving in the air made their way towards a makeshift stage. A jovial, jubilant crowd of all ages, a butcher with a Madonna mic calling prices, and bags upon boxes upon trolleys full of meat.
It can be manic, but it's a good experience. It's fun, hustle and bustle, and getting cheap deals.
Hectic, absolutely hectic. Meat getting flung all over the place.
Seeing is believing. The atmosphere is electric, it's wonderful, crowds and crowds of people.
This is a tradition that's been going on for over a century. It started as a way for market traders to shift their surplus stock before the Christmas holidays, but has endured well past advances in refrigeration. The auction is a quirky part of London's cultural and festive history, and a date in the diary for the city's carnivores, those who love a bargain, and anyone who enjoys a spectacle. If you fit that description, listen closely. As Christmas approaches, so does the next instalment, and it will be one of the last in the auction's history, as the market, a site of trading for nearly 900 years, is set to close in 2028. A big change within the historic City of London square mile. But not just yet. Smithfield's market is currently the largest wholesale meat market in the UK and one of the largest in Europe. It's also London's oldest trading market, having seen nearly a millennium of action. Originally called Smithfield, the Old English word for smooth, which described the flat land, it sat just outside London's medieval wall and was a livestock market from the Middle Ages until the 19th century. The terrain also made it ideal for sport, including the odd spot of knights on horseback jousting. Later, it doubled as a place of grisly public executions. Scottish rebel William Wallace was hung, drawn and quartered here in 1305. The livestock market was closed in the 1850s after the growing city had had enough of the animal mess, and in its place, a grand new Victorian structure, extra strong phoenix columns holding up an enormous ceiling. The architect, Horace Jones, also designed Tower Bridge. It's been operating in its current guise since 1868. Today, the market supplies mostly London's restaurants, hotels and the wider catering industry. The general public can visit and buy from Smithfield throughout the year, but you'll need to be committed. Opening hours are between midnight and 7 a.m, an unusual time to buy steak. One perk of the auction, which kicks off at 10:30 in the morning this year, is getting to experience Smithfields without putting out your body clock. Greg Lawrence started working here in the 60s. He founded the family-run G. Lawrence Meat Company in 1968, and he's hosted the Christmas Eve auction for the last 50 years.
In the early days, when I first joined the market, it was over 2 or 3 days. There was auction on the 22nd, 23rd and 24th of December, and that was for turkeys only. I wanted to keep the auction going because it's a wonderful thing for London and all the people who attend. I like the traditions to carry on, I really do, because most traditions in London are finished, and this is just one of the traditions that does carry on. It starts Christmas off as well, and we do try to make sure everyone gets accommodated with something, because that's what it's all about. What we would never want is any customer who attends the auction to go home empty-handed. We wouldn't have that. You know, everyone enjoys, has a good laugh, and the produce that's sold is wonderful.
Unlike a regular auction, there's no bidding. Rather, Greg and his staff of Christmas helpers bring out different cuts of meat and offer a price. If you want in, wave your money in the air and get their attention. Here are his top tips.
Cash only. Make sure they're very vocal, shout out, put their arms up. Be early and be there. They're the sayings. We do have fun. Near the end of the auction, we'll have what they call the flip of the coin. We're auctioning a turkey. Anyone in the crowd, we say to them, heads or tails, if you call right, you get the turkey for nothing. If you call wrong, you pay for your turkey. So the customer can't lose.
One customer that both won and lost was a friend of mine who walked away with a free leg of lamb from the coin toss, only to discover that it was bigger than his oven. Greg gives me another tip that would have been helpful at the time. Should you end up with a large, unwieldy piece of meat, stick around and him and his team will cut it for you.
If I didn't work up here and I'd attend the auction, and I would do, with an open mind, and by that I mean, I'd say to my wife, I don't know what I'm going to bring home, but whatever I bring home, that's what we're going to have for Christmas dinner. So it'd be a surprise. It's all going to be good anyway, but so it makes it a little bit exciting.
After the action, which usually lasts under 2 hours, it's time for another tradition, a trip to the pub. Fiona McCann runs the nearby Bishop's Finger, one of the few long-standing pubs left in the area, which once served the market.
It's just very traditional. It hasn't really changed in a very, very long time. All the pictures are generally from around the meat market and around Kent, where the brewery is based. The brewery is the oldest brewers in Britain, 1698. Many moons ago, butchers used to come over after they finished work at sort of very early hours of the morning, 3-4 o'clock in the morning. So you'd have the old butchers with all the blood and sawdust all over them, but that doesn't really happen these days.
As well as offering you a fine selection of ales and a pork pie, if you're in need, Fiona won't raise an eyebrow if you come in with your winnings. She's used to the Christmas Eve morning clientele.
When the people come in after the auction, they always generally come in quite happy, ready for a pint, but they're happy that they've got a huge leg of lamb or a huge chunk of meat. They've got a good bargain, but it's generally just like a whole huge leg of lamb just in a plastic bag.
The auction at Smithfields is a unique way to kick off your culinary Christmas in London. Dress warm, bring cash, don't be shy as you frantically wave your arms at Greg, and experience a piece of London history while it's still here to enjoy.
Thanks, Angelica. This year, the Smithfields Christmas Eve meat auction starts at 10:30 a.m. on Tuesday, 24th December. It'll be held under the clock on Grand Avenue in London's Farringdon. And that's all for this edition of The Menu. Remember that we are back with a new episode again on Friday at 2000 London time. That's at midday in San Francisco. Also, don't forget to tune into our spin-off show Food Neighbourhoods for a tour of some of the world's tastiest destinations. I am Chiara Rimella. This programme was produced by Monica Lillis and our sound engineer was Flynn Simons. Thanks for listening, and until next week.